The early morning sun barely touched the horizon, casting long shadows over the dusty ranch. A faint breeze rustled through the sparse grass, carrying the scent of hay and damp earth. The yard was quiet, almost peaceful, until a sudden, desperate scream shattered the calm. "She's not breathing," the girl shouted, her voice trembling, breaking the stillness. Her small hands clutched a limp child to her chest, and her eyes were wide with panic. The toddler's tiny body felt impossibly fragile in her arms, and a thin streak of dirt smeared across her face only highlighted the raw terror in her expression. From the barn, the rancher heard the scream and sprinted toward the yard. His boots kicked up dust as he ran, his rugged frame moving with surprising speed for a man of his years. His heart tightened at the sight before him. The girl, frantic and trembling, holding the lifeless form of a child. He dropped to his knees beside them without hesitation, the gravel biting into his palms. The rancher's eyes quickly assessed the situation, trained instincts kicking in. He felt for a pulse, checked the tiny chest, and found only faint, irregular movements. Every second stretched heavy and unbearable. The girl knelt beside him, fingers brushing his arm as though her touch could will life back into the child. Her voice broke repeatedly. "Please, please don't leave me. Don't leave her." The rancher placed the child carefully on the ground, positioning her small body to give the best chance of survival. Dust swirled around them, caught in the morning light like tiny sparks frozen in time. He glanced at the girl, her face streaked with tears and dirt, her lips quivering in fear. He gave her a slow, firm nod, silent reassurance that he would do everything in his power to save the child. The world seemed to narrow into that moment. The quiet ranch, the rising sun, the trembling girl, and the fragile life lying between them. The wind, once playful, now seemed to hold its breath along with them. The rancher drew in a deep, steadying breath, centering himself against the storm of panic surrounding them. He knew that action, not fear, would determine whether a small life would continue or slip away. Time hung suspended as he prepared to act, every muscle in his body coiled and ready. The stakes could not have been higher, and the weight of the moment pressed down on all three of them: the girl, the child, and the man who had arrived just in time. The rancher's hands pressed firmly against the child's tiny chest, each compression deliberate, calculated, and precise. He counted under his breath, trying to stay calm despite the adrenaline coursing through him. Every second felt like an eternity, each moment a fragile thread on which life itself hung. The girl knelt beside him, her fingers brushing the child's arm, trembling with helplessness. "Come on, breathe. Please," she whispered, her voice cracking with fear. The child's body was fragile, almost weightless in the rancher's hands. Her lips were pale, and a faint blue tinge clung to her skin. The rancher's mind raced, cycling through every emergency he had ever faced. He remembered drills, past accidents, and the cold reality of lives lost despite his best efforts. But this time he refused to fail. Time slowed. The wind whistled softly through the yard, a quiet counterpoint to the girl's sobs. The rancher kept rhythm, counting the compressions, watching the child's chest, listening for any sign of life. He murmured low, encouraging words, not just to the child but to himself, grounding himself against the panic that threatened to take over. Minutes dragged on. The girl's pleas became frantic. "Please, don't leave her. I can't lose her." Tears streaked her dusty face and her small hands shook violently. The rancher's eyes flicked to hers, a steady, unwavering gaze meeting a storm of fear. He squeezed her shoulder gently, silently saying, "I've got this. I won't let her go." Then, almost imperceptibly at first, a cough, a tiny, rasping sound escaped the child's lips. The girl gasped, clinging to hope. But the child's body went limp again, testing their nerves, refusing to allow relief too soon. The rancher continued undeterred. "Come on, little one. Just a few more breaths," he whispered, pressing on with precise, determined rhythm. Finally, a stronger cough, followed by a small, shuddering breath. The child's eyes fluttered open slightly, confusion and weakness mingling in her gaze. The girl's sobs broke free, a cry of uncontainable relief. "She's alive!" she shouted, her voice trembling yet triumphant. The rancher didn't relax completely. He remained vigilant, hands still ready, but the first thread of life had returned. fragile yet undeniable. In that instant, the rancher felt the weight of the morning, the fear and the fragile miracle of survival. The stakes had been unimaginably high, but for now life had won a small victory. The child's tiny chest rose and fell with shallow, uneven breaths. Each one was a victory, each one a promise that life had not abandoned them yet. The rancher's hands lingered briefly on the child, ensuring that the fragile rhythm continued before he allowed the girl to lift her into her arms. Trembling, the girl hugged the child close, smoothing her blanket and murmuring soothing words. Her tears fell freely now, mixing with dust, dirt, and relief. "It's okay. It's okay now. You're safe," she whispered, her voice a fragile mixture of awe and exhaustion. The rancher slowly rose to his feet, dusting gravel from his knees and rubbing sweat from his brow. His breathing was heavy but measured as he surveyed the small yard around them. The panic of minutes ago had faded, replaced by a quiet, tentative relief. He looked at the girl who now clutched the child protectively and saw her trembling hands, her wide eyes, and the raw gratitude in her expression. Words were unnecessary. The depth of her relief was visible in every movement. For a moment they all just breathed. The rancher, the girl, and the child, connected through a shared ordeal that had tested their limits. The rancher noticed how the girl's shoulders relaxed slightly as the child stirred, blinking up at her sister with fragile curiosity. She pressed her face close to the child's, whispering promises she hoped she could keep, while the rancher watched quietly, a steady guardian in the background. The wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of wildflowers and dry earth, a gentle reminder that the world continued even after moments of near tragedy. The rancher allowed himself a small sigh, his hands dropping to his sides. He had acted, and now the immediate danger had passed. Yet he remained vigilant, knowing that survival had only just begun for the tiny child in the girl's arms. Slowly, the girl lifted her gaze to meet the rancher's eyes. Gratitude and fear still mingled in her expression. "Thank you. I don't know what I would have done without you," she said, her voice trembling. The rancher simply nodded, understanding more than words could convey. The bond between them had been forged in a crucible of fear and action, unspoken but undeniable. Outside the yard, the sun climbed higher, illuminating the barn, fences, and distant plains. Life had returned, fragile yet persistent. In that quiet aftermath, a sense of safety settled over them. The girl now held her sibling not just with relief, but with renewed determination. And the rancher knew that for now, the immediate crisis had ended. But the memory of this morning would linger forever, binding them together in a silent, unbreakable bond. The girl carefully carried the child toward the small farmhouse, her arms trembling slightly, but steady enough to keep her sibling safe. The rancher followed at a short distance, silent and watchful, his rugged frame a protective presence against the warm morning light. The air between them was heavy with unspoken words, relief, gratitude, and the shared memory of the near tragedy that had just passed. Neither spoke immediately. The silence itself seemed sufficient, carrying the weight of everything they had just endured. Inside the house, the child was gently laid on the bed, her blanket tucked snugly around her tiny frame. The girl hovered close, checking the child's breathing, brushing stray hair from her forehead, and murmuring soft reassurances. Her voice wavered at first, then steadied as she felt the child respond with tiny movements, slight but unmistakable. The rancher stood near the doorway, arms crossed loosely, surveying the scene with keen eyes. There was no need for instructions yet. His presence alone radiated safety and authority. For a long moment he simply watched. The girl's hand smoothed the child's blanket again and again, a repetitive gesture that revealed both lingering fear and an emerging sense of control. He noticed how she drew a deep breath each time the child stirred, how her eyes softened when the little one blinked open. There was pride mixed with tenderness, an instinctive, protective courage that reminded him of the fragility and strength intertwined in human life. Stepping outside onto the porch, the rancher leaned against the wooden railing, hands resting lightly on the weathered wood. The sun had climbed higher, casting a warm glow over the yard, but his mind remained focused on the lesson of this morning. Life could change in an instant. One moment everything seemed normal. The next it could hang by a single thread. The girl, the child, and he himself had felt that precarious balance. He thought of his own past, moments he had witnessed but rarely shared, the quiet tragedies that had shaped his understanding of responsibility. Looking back at the girl, he realized that she had just faced a weight no child should ever bear. Yet she had acted and acted with courage born of love. The bond between them did not require words. It was forged in crisis, in shared fear, in the delicate act of survival. The girl finally glanced toward the doorway, catching his eye. She smiled faintly, a mixture of exhaustion and gratitude. He nodded subtly, an acknowledgement of trust and understanding passing silently between them. No words were necessary. The bond was established, unspoken yet absolute, and it would linger long after the morning's terror had faded. The girl sat on the edge of the bed, gently brushing a strand of hair from the child's flushed forehead. Each rise and fall of the child's tiny chest brought a new wave of relief, a reminder that the worst had passed. Her hands, still trembling from the morning's terror, now moved with careful intention, ensuring the child was comfortable and warm. The rancher remained nearby, standing quietly at the doorway, his presence steadying the room like a protective shadow. "Keep her upright for a few minutes," he instructed in a calm, low voice, breaking the silence. "Watch her breathing. If it changes, you need to stay alert. Don't panic, just focus." His words were measured, carrying both authority and reassurance. The girl nodded eagerly, absorbing every instruction as if it were a lifeline. She repeated the steps aloud, confirming her understanding, her voice gaining strength with each word. The rancher watched her carefully, recognizing the transformation unfolding before him. Fear was giving way to determination. Panic had been replaced by a careful, focused vigilance. In that moment, he realized that survival depended not just on quick action, but on teaching others to carry that knowledge forward. The child's safety was now shared between them, and the girl was beginning to rise to the responsibility. Minutes passed quietly, filled with small acts of care, the girl gently rubbing the child's back, adjusting the blanket, murmuring soothing words. The rancher offered guidance as needed, his experience shaping her actions without overshadowing her instinctive courage. There was a subtle rhythm to the room now, a fragile harmony born from shared ordeal. Finally, he stepped back slightly, signaling that the immediate crisis was over. The girl looked up at him, her eyes wide with gratitude and awe. I don't know how to thank you," she whispered, her voice soft but firm. He shook his head slightly, a small, grim smile tugging at his lips. "Just keep her safe," he replied simply. "That's thanks enough." Outside, the ranch stirred with the sound of morning life returning, the distant lowing of cattle, the soft creak of the barn doors, the whispering wind over the plains. The rancher felt the subtle weight of what had been accomplished. He had acted, the child had survived, and now the girl had grown in courage, ready to carry on with her siblings' care. As he prepared to leave, he cast one last glance inside the house. The bond formed in the crucible of fear lingered in the room, silent, unspoken, but strong. The healing had begun, not just for the child's body, but for the girl's heart as well. And the rancher knew that sometimes the quiet lessons were as powerful as any heroic act. The sun had climbed higher over the ranch, bathing the fields and barn in warm, golden light. The morning's chaos had faded, leaving only the soft hum of life returning to normal. Birds chirped in the distance, the wind rustled gently through the prairie grass, and even the cattle seemed to sense the calm after the storm. Inside the farmhouse, the child rested peacefully, her tiny chest rising and falling steadily. The girl sat beside her, brushing back her hair and humming softly, a sense of quiet pride in her eyes. The rancher leaned against the porch railing, his silhouette framed by the brightening sky. He watched the two sisters with a careful eye, knowing that the morning's events had left a mark on them all. The girl's shoulders were no longer tense, her hands more steady, her face showing the fragile confidence that comes from surviving a near tragedy. The child, safe in her sister's arms, stirred occasionally but remained calm, a testament to both her resilience and the girl's newfound strength. After a few moments, the girl stepped outside, carrying the child in a protective hold. Her gaze met the rancher's, and she offered a small, tentative smile, one that spoke of gratitude deeper than words could capture. He tipped his hat in acknowledgement, a silent gesture of respect and understanding. The bond forged in the fire of fear remained unspoken but absolute. "You saved us," she said softly, her voice barely more than a whisper. I don't know how we could have managed without you." The rancher's jaw tightened slightly, a faint smile breaking through his usually stoic expression. "You did most of the hard work," he replied, his voice low but firm. "You kept her alive. I just helped." "Remember that," the girl nodded, understanding fully. She adjusted the blanket around the child, holding her close, feeling a surge of love and responsibility. The rancher watched them, knowing that his role had shifted. His presence was no longer required in the same way. The girl now had the confidence and skill to care for her sibling. But he also knew that the memory of this morning, the fear, the courage, the triumph, would stay with all of them forever. With a quiet sigh, the rancher mounted his horse. He lingered for a moment, looking back at the farmhouse, the yard, the girl, and the child, all bathed in the golden light of the new day. Then, with the ease of a man who has faced danger and prevailed, he nudged the horse forward and rode toward the horizon. His figure grew smaller against the open plains, a solitary silhouette moving steadily into the distance. The girl waved, tears glistening in her eyes, but they were tears of relief and gratitude rather than fear. She whispered to the child, "He saved you. And me too. We'll be okay." The wind carried their words across the ranch, mingling with the soft sounds of life. Somewhere out on the plains, the rancher's steady figure disappeared into the distance, leaving behind courage, hope, and a quiet reminder that heroism often comes in the form of calm, deliberate action when it is needed most. As the sun rose fully, bathing the ranch in warmth, the girl and her sibling stood at the threshold of a day no longer marked by fear, but by the fragile, enduring strength of survival, and the knowledge that sometimes, even in the face of terror, help can arrive just in time.